Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Homeschool Tracker Getting Started webinar. My name's Dave, and I'm from Homeschool Tracker. And I just want to spend just a second just to say thank you. Thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks for taking some time out of your afternoon to learn a little bit more about Homeschool Tracker, and thank you for being a customer. Thanks for giving it a try, and we hope that you'll be successful with Homeschool Tracker this year in your homeschooling school year. It's our mission really just to provide tools and support to allow you to be better at homeschooling. And so we just want to say how much we appreciate you as a customer. And, just talk a little bit about the purpose of this webinar. Really, we want to um, not only provide you the tools with Homeschool Tracker, but provide you with the training and the support so that you can use those tools effectively. So we're hoping that you'll get a lot of value out of this webinar today. And certainly, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask those right in the Q&A widget in your webinar viewer. And any questions that we don't get to today, we'll follow up directly with you via email. And we'll also include a summary blog post that includes a recording of this webinar along with a lot of the questions that were asked today. So I want to spend just a minute going over what we're going to talk about today. We'll talk a little bit about where to find help with Homeschool Tracker. We'll discuss the difference between subjects and courses. We'll spend a lot of time talking about assignments, which are really the heart of Homeschool Tracker. Um, and we'll talk about lesson plans, which are a great way to speed up data entry and save you time and stay organized with younger students. And then we'll talk a little bit about generating reports and especially the daily task list, which a lot of folks use on a regular basis. And we'll talk about workflows. And it's great to know all the tools and how they work, but thinking about how you use those on a regular basis. And we'll go over a lot of different ways that you can use Homeschool Tracker in your homeschool. We'll probably talk a little bit about that as we go, but then we'll kind of summarize with a few different ways that you can use Homeschool Tracker. And then we'll wrap up with a time of Q&A. And I know a lot of you submitted plenty of questions ahead of time, which is great. So we'll hopefully answer a lot of those as we go. But again, feel free to ask questions along the way, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. We're scheduled to go for about an hour, and hopefully we have enough time to cover everything. If not, we're definitely planning on having more of these. This is our first one, so thanks so much for bearing with us and with your patience as we kind of work through a lot of the technical details and kind of working on how we teach Homeschool Tracker along the way. So I want to jump in real quick and talk a little bit about where to find help. So based off of the questions that a lot of you submitted, it seems like many of you are doing great, kind of just getting started in terms of setting up your account and creating your school year and adding students, that sort of thing. But I want to point you, if you haven't seen them, to the Getting Started tutorial videos, because they're a great resource that goes over a lot of those details. I'm just going to show you real quick where to find those. So I'm just going to share my screen with you here. So at any time, you can go to help.homeschooltracker.com. This is our main help library. And the Getting Started video guide is right here. So you'll see part 1 through part 11. You can jump right in there and view those at any time. One of the nice things is part 1, definitely if you haven't seen that and you are having difficulty kind of setting up your school and adding students, that one covers all of that right there. So I'm going to assume that many of you are past that, and we'll kind of dive in after that video. But it is a great place to jump in if you have any questions along the way. Okay, so let's jump back to other places where you can find help. So this help documentation is really extensive. And if you've ever looked at it, it might even be a little bit overwhelming. So it's definitely organized more as a reference guide rather than a user manual. So one thing that I like to tell users is that anytime you're in a specific screen on Homeschool Tracker, so for example, if I'm in the agenda list view here, if I have any questions about this view, all I have to do is click on the help link up here in the top right corner. It'll take me directly to the help page about that particular screen. So anything and everything you could want to know about the agenda list view is going to be here. and it includes lots of hyperlinks to other pages that describe a lot of the finer details. So definitely take advantage of that. And then lastly, if you are stuck, please don't hesitate to email us directly at support@homeschooltracker.com. I know many of you have probably reached out to us in the past, and you've likely spoken to my wife Amy, who handles all of our email support. And I know she's monitoring that email box all the time and tries to get back to everybody in a timely manner. If you don't hear back from us for some reason, it might have not, your email message might have not gone through. So feel free to send it again. We definitely respond to each and every email that we receive. So if you don't hear back from us after a day or two, there may have been an issue with the email that you sent. Okay, so let's jump back to our slides here. Um, and talk a little bit about subjects and courses. So this is an important distinction in Homeschool Tracker, the difference between subjects and courses. And subjects are broad areas of study. So things like math or language arts or history or science. Um, when you initially create your Homeschool Tracker account, those four subjects are in there by default. And you can certainly add more, edit those, delete those, however, whatever works best for you. Generally, we see most Homeschool Tracker accounts have anywhere between 5 and 10 subjects. Anything more than 10 subjects, you might want to think about the way that you're organizing your homeschool, because subjects are supposed to be broad. Where you get more specific are with courses, and so courses are specific areas of study. So these are things like Algebra 2 or Composition 1 or Physical Science 1, and those tend to refer to specific courses, or you could think of them as classes. And each course is assigned a subject, essentially. So, for example, Algebra 2 belongs to the subject of math, Composition 1 would belong to the subject of language arts, and Physical Science 1 might belong to the subject of science. So let's just do a quick demo of how that works and what that looks like in Homeschool Tracker. So here I am in Homeschool Tracker, and I'm just going to go straight over to the subjects screen. And so by clicking on the menu over on the Manage Lists section of the screen, I'm just going to make sure that you can see my mouse here. On the Manage List section of the screen, I'll click on the Subjects link. And this will display a list of all the subjects that I currently have in my homeschool. So you can see history, language arts, math, reading, science, social studies. There's not really a lot to do here because, like I said, subjects are pretty straightforward. They're just a broad area of study. You can set whether it's a core or an elective. It'll show you what courses you have that correspond to that subject, and you can make it active or inactive. So that's where subjects live. To create a new subject, you simply click on Action and then go to Add. You can add your subject name there and click Save. But let's head over to courses. And this is what I was saying is the more specific area of study, or you can think of it like a class. And so, for example, here we've got Ancient History 1, which belongs to the subject of history. And there's a lot of other details here, things like credit units or the calculation option or the grading scale. If I double click on this, you can see all of the details here that you can edit. So let's go ahead and let's just create a new course while we're in here. I'm going to click Action and Add. I'm going to call this one Reading 1. And for subject, we know that reading probably belongs in language arts. So I'll go ahead and type in language arts, and I'm going to pause right there. So as you saw, as I was typing that in, language arts popped up. And you'll see this throughout Homeschool Tracker. These are what are called smart entry fields. And what they do is while you're typing, they actually search your database, and they search the corresponding list of that particular field for things that match what you're typing. So in this case, it's searching our subject list for anything that matches what I was typing in. So as you're typing, you can see it hits language arts, and you can click on that and select it. Now that's really important because you want to make sure that your course lines up with exactly the subject you want it to. So if I accidentally typed language arts with 2 S's, what it's actually going to do then, if I click Save, it'll create a new subject called language arts with 2 S's. That could be confusing down the line. One of the nice things is, and I recommend this to all users that if you don't know exactly what you want here in this field, or you forgot exactly what your subject might be called, you can simply enter a space bar, or excuse me, a space, hit the space bar, and it'll bring up a list of everything that's available on that particular list. So in this case, it's pulling all of my subjects in, and I can choose which one I want. So in this case, I'll do language arts. And then all these other fields here are optional and a little bit more advanced. So you can add the number of credit units that this course might be worth, how those credit units are calculated, change the grading scale, use weighted grading, etc. These are a little bit more advanced topics that we'll probably cover in a future webinar, but certainly, take advantage of the help section if you want to learn more about that, or email us directly. So now I've got my Reading One course created. It's in the language arts subject, and I'll just go ahead and click Save. It says it added one new item. Just click Refresh to view. And there we go. So now I have Reading One. It's in language arts, and it's ready to go. So that's how you create a course and assign it to a subject. Let's jump back over to our slides here. So the next thing we want to talk about are assignments. And assignments are really the heart of your record keeping in Homeschool Tracker. It's they represent schoolwork tasks that we give our students to complete. And we say schoolwork tasks because we have other items that you can create for chores or appointments, that sort of thing. And so assignments are really the things that you are assigning your student to do on a particular day, and something that you would probably mark as complete or incomplete at the end of the day or whenever it's finished. And each assignment requires a student, requires a subject course, which we just talked about, and it requires a date. And there's obviously lots of optional fields that you can fill out as well, things like topic or activity or resource or notes. You can assign a specific time on that date. You can make points possible for grading. You can tell it how much time was spent on that particular assignment. All of these things are optional, but the three things that are absolutely required are the student, the subject course, and the date. And you can create assignments a number of different ways. You can create them individually, one at a time. You can create them in a series or multiple assignments at one time, or they can be scheduled from a lesson plan. They can also be copied from existing assignments. So if you had a number of assignments for one student and wanted to copy them or duplicate them for another student, you could certainly do that. Now, the trick with assignments is that when you mark them complete as a teacher, a number of things can happen. Um, Marking an assignment as complete, if you have auto attendance enabled, can generate an attendance record. If you're grading assignments, those grades will then be generated and stored. If you're tracking time spent, when you mark something complete, the time spent will be calculated. And from all of those things, you can then generate lots of reports. So, for example, with attendance, you can generate attendance reports. For grades, you can create report cards, transcripts, etc. For time spent, you can create time spent reports. And so that's why we say that the assignment is really kind of the heart of all your record keeping, because all the information you put into an assignment, and then all the information that is generated when you mark that assignment as complete, is what then goes to create all of those different reports that make Homeschool Tracker really powerful. So here's just a little diagram of kind of how that plays out. So you can see assignments right here in the middle, the heart of all your record keeping. And they come from probably a few different places like we talked about. So they can be created individually or in a series. They can come from a lesson plan, which then you use the scheduler to create assignments. And then from those assignments, you can generate report cards and transcripts. It can generate auto attendance records. You can generate the daily task list and a number of additional reports. And we'll talk about lesson plans and scheduler and the scheduler a little bit later. So let's do a little bit of a demo here on how to create assignments, both individually and multiple assignments at once. And then we'll also add grades to those assignments and mark those as complete so you can see how that works. I'm going to jump back here to Homeschool Tracker. Let's close these. So I'm going to jump over to the agenda calendar view, which is over here in the schedules and planning area of the menu. A lot of folks like to work in the calendar view because it shows you, a quick snapshot of what's happening in your week. And today is August 11th, so I'm going to go ahead and add a single assignment. So I'm just going to show you how to create one assignment. If you just go to click Add and Assignment Single, you can choose a student. So I'm going to choose my daughter Campbell and subject course. So like we showed you earlier with the smart entry fields, I'm just going to hit the space bar. That'll bring up a list of all the subject or all the courses and subjects that I have. Let's go ahead and make this for ancient history. And then the date, like we said, we'll do it on the 11th. So those are really the only three fields that are absolutely necessary. Now, obviously, you probably want to fill out more things depending on what you're using Homeschool Tracker for. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and fill out activity. And activity is, again, it's another one of those smart entry fields. So I can hit the space bar and see all the activities that I have in my activity list. So this will be a lesson. I can do the same for resource. In resource, we'll search all of my library items that I've designated resource. I'm just going to pick this one, even though that's obviously not for ancient history. Page lesson chapter, or PLC, abbreviated here, is just more additional information. So I could say, page 30. And I can set a start and end time. So I'll go ahead and make this for 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Now, possible and earned, these are the points possible and the points earned. So for this particular assignment, let's say it's worth 10 points. And since it's an hour long, the time spent will automatically fill out as 1 hour. And I can add additional directions in here as well for my students. So I could say, read page 30, and do the questions at the end. And click save. So there I've got my single assignment. I'll go ahead and hit save. And we see it here on the calendar. So Campbell has an ancient history 1 assignment at 9 a.m. You can simply just click on it, get a quick glimpse of it, read page 30, and do the questions at the end. Since I'm using a resource, it's pulling a thumbnail of that resource from my library. And I can click on more to see everything that we just created and edit it if I need to. So that's how you create a single assignment. What I'm going to do now is I'll go ahead and grade it and mark it complete. So I can jump back in here, go back to more. And, I said it was worth 10 possible points. And let's say Campbell got 9 on that. And then what I do is if I just click on teacher complete right here, I marked it complete. And what you'll notice is it calculated a grade at that time of 90%. So 9 out of 10 is 90%. So I'll go ahead and click save because I think I'm all set there. And when I did that, I think you might have noticed up here, it says Campbell present. And that's because I have auto attendance enabled. And auto attendance basically says that anytime an assignment is marked teacher complete on a particular day, that means that the student was present for that day. And so we'll create an attendance record for that day. This is something you can turn off if you don't like it. It's right in the program options. I'll show you where that is real quick. So if you jump back to your menu, go to the program options and go to the attendance tab here. I currently have auto attendance set to true. There's a number of different options here. You can have it say present half day instead of full day, et cetera. So it's really up to you how you want to handle that. And again, feel free to jump to the help section here if you have any questions on that. So I'll jump back to the calendar view. And so we've got that single assignment created an attendance record. If I click on that again, you'll see that this teacher complete icon is green with a check mark. And that's a little shortcut too. As you saw, I did it from here in the edit menu, but you can also do it right here. If you just click once and then if I uncheck it, now it's no longer teacher complete, but I can just quickly go in there, check it, and fill out my grade, hit continue, and you're all set. So that's how you would just add a single assignment. And a lot of folks do this on a daily basis, right? So you could certainly do this every morning or the night before a school day. Go ahead and create all the assignments that you want for the following day. Have your student do them. And at the end of the day, go back in and add the grades, mark them complete, and you're all set. The other way you could do this is where, let's say you don't necessarily know what you're going to do on that particular day, but you want to add all your records after the fact. So if you perhaps are an unschooler Or if you just, are really flexible and you let the day kind of dictate what you're going to work on that day, you could go in at the end of the day or even at the end of the week for that matter, create all of your assignments for the work that you did do, grade them, mark them complete, and you're good to go. The advantage of doing that is that you essentially are creating a record, a written or digital record of all the work that you completed, which will certainly help down the line if you want to create a report card or a transcript or generate any of the other reports that you can do. Okay, so I see lots of questions coming in, and rather than jump into those right now, we are gonna save them for the end. And like I said too, if we don't get to your specific question, we will follow up with you directly with the answer, as well as try to include a lot of those in our follow-up blog post. So I'm gonna show you now how to create multiple assignments at once. And so if I click on Add and choose Assignment Multiple, you're presented with essentially a wizard here, which kind of walks you through the process of creating multiple assignments. Before I get into all the details, I just want to show you up here at the top these three tabs: Students and Details, Day and Date, Page, Lesson, Chapter. You'll see this kind of navigation throughout Homeschool Tracker. And this often kind of trips people up because you might not realize that you can click on these. So this is a quick way to kind of jump between these three tabs in Homeschool Tracker. So I'm going to create multiple assignments. And I'm going to do assignments for both of my students, Campbell and Manning. And so for subject course, I'll go ahead and hit the space bar. Let's do ancient history again. Activity, these are lessons. And we'll pick that same resource. Let's go ahead and make these for 9 to 10 a.m. Again, they're worth 10 possible points. And let's go ahead and continue to day and date. So that takes us to the next tab here. And I have some options here for the day option. So I'm going to skip days off. I'm going to skip non-school days. And then I can choose how I want to schedule these. So I can use a preset, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I can schedule them daily, weekly, monthly, or I can even spread them evenly over a given date range, depending on the number of items that I want to create. So let's just go ahead and do daily. We'll say every one day. And we'll have these start tomorrow on the 12th. And so I have two options here. I can continue creating items until a specific end date, or I can continue creating items until PLC pattern is exhausted. And remember, the PLC stands for page, lesson, chapter. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that option and continue to PLC. And so this is really where the power of kind of adding multiple assignments or items at once comes in, because as you may have experienced, page, lesson, chapter, or this PLC concept, you can auto create and auto increment the page, lesson, chapter by a number of different ways. And so, for example, if you want your student to read lesson one, or read chapter one on day one, and then read chapter two on day two, and read chapter three on day three, etc. You don't have to necessarily create individual assignments and write chapter one, chapter two, chapter three. You can have it do it automatically right here. So I'm going to do a one-part auto increment. And a lot of these concepts here, they might not make sense initially, but when you see how it works, I think it'll kind of come together for you. So we'll do one-part auto increment. And the leading text, let's just put lesson. I'm going to start with lesson one, and we'll end with lesson three. And we'll increment by one, and we won't use leading zeros. And so what that's going to do, and what I can do is I can click on this little sample button here. It'll show me what this auto increment is going to do. So it's going to create something called lesson one, then lesson two, then lesson three. And then that's the end of the pattern, because essentially we said start with one, end with three, and increment by one. I could also change this and say end with five and increment by one. And what it'll do is it'll create five. This little display only shows four at a time, but essentially it would create five assignments then. And because we had selected continue creating items until the pattern is exhausted, in this case, it would create five items and then the pattern would be exhausted. So let's go back to three. We'll just create three. And real quick, I'll just show you that you can also do two-part auto increment or three-part. If you do a two-part, essentially you would then have, like, for example, lesson 1 dash A or lesson 1.3, or it just depends on what your curriculum or what your lessons may require. I'm going to go back to that one part increment and continue to preview. And so what continue to preview does, it'll just give me a preview of all the items that it's going to create based off of what I put into these different pages here. Okay, so this is the preview. Now it's just a preview. These items haven't been assigned to the agenda yet or anything like that. It just gives you a quick view of what you are about to, I won't say commit to, but what you are about to save essentially to the agenda. So you can see I've got Campbell and Manning starting on Wednesday at 9 a.m. lesson 1, and then on Thursday at 9 a.m. lesson 2, and then Friday at 9 a.m. lesson 3. And so you remember we just created 3 lessons, but we did it for 2 students, and we started on Wednesday, August 12th. So this is exactly what I wanted to do. I can select the items that I want to then assign to the agenda, or I can just hit select all because I want all of these, and I'll go ahead and hit accept selected items. Great. So now that I've accepted those, you can see them here on the agenda. So Campbell has lesson 1 on Wednesday. So does Manning, lesson 1. If we look at Thursday, now it's lesson 2. And then Friday should be lesson 3. So just shows you how you can create multiple assignments all at once. And so again, kind of thinking about workflow, you could certainly do this, Sunday night, for example, for your week, and kind of create all of the assignments that you want for that particular week. Or if you're working backwards and just want to create all of the work you did for the previous week, you could do that this way as well. So that's kind of how you would do that here in the calendar view. I want to show what the list view looks like. So a lot of users kind of go straight to the calendar view because it's comfortable. It's what we might be familiar at looking at, and that's perfectly fine. The list view, though, allows a number of other pretty powerful options. So I'm going to go ahead and actually I should explain that. So in the list view, on the left column here, these are filters. And so depending on how these filters are set will determine what you're going to see in the list view right here. So for example, date range, right now I'm looking at 8/16 through 8/22, which is next week. And that's why we don't see anything, because we just created all of those assignments for this week. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in here, choose this week, and there they are. So you'll see that one assignment we created for Campbell is already marked teacher complete with the T. And then these are the other assignments that will be starting on Wednesday. Now there's a number of different features here in the list view that you won't see in the calendar view. The first one being that you can sort these. So for example, if I wanted to sort by date, I'll just click on the date column here. And right now we're sorting ascending, as you see with the arrow there. I can also then click it again to sort descending or turn off that sort. You can also sort by multiple columns at once. So for example, I could sort by student, ascending, so Campbell, then Manning. But then I can also sort by date. So I can sort by ascending student and descending date. And so this is where we get a lot of support questions because people get tripped up because they might have multiple sorts turned on. And it can be kind of confusing, but at the same time, there may be situations where you want this to happen. So if you're ever looking at the list view and things are just not looking correct in terms of the way they're sorted, take a look and see if you have these sorts turned on with these little triangles. And to turn them off, just keep clicking on it until that disappears. And again, with this one, until that disappears. Now, the other thing with the list view is that these columns, you can group items by those columns. So if I want to group things by student, just click on the student column and drag it up here to this header area and let go. And now I've grouped these items by student. These are collapsible too. So you can see how this can start to get pretty powerful. Say, for example, you have 10 students and you don't necessarily need to see them all at once, but you want to quickly kind of take a look at what they have in their agenda. You can do that here. And to clear that grouping, you can just click on this X. It can also be helpful to group by type. So if I drag type up there, so now I can see all the assignments. I can see attendance separately. And then of course the sorting works here as well. So I can group by assignment, but sort by student, right? So there's a lot of really powerful ways to to look at your agenda in the list view. Additionally, you can click on Options and choose Columns, and this will display or let you turn on and off the different columns that you view. So by default, you have the columns that you see here, but you could certainly add additional ones that you want to view as well. And then lastly, and this is another great feature of the list view, is you can edit multiple items at once. So for example, if I want to click and drag and edit all of these assignments, I can just select those and then go up to Action, Multi-Edit. And I can jump in here and say, okay, I want to mark all of these complete. Go ahead and click that and hit save. And now they're all marked teacher complete. And as I did that, you notice it generated all of these attendance records as well, since we have auto attendance turned on. You can also, by multi-editing, change the subject course that they might be in, or the type. Pretty much all the fields are available to edit in bulk that way. One other quick shortcut, if you had a number of assignments like that, you could simply select them and choose Action Mark as Complete directly in the menu here, instead of having to go to multi-edit first. And there's a number of other options here, so you can delete items all at once, duplicate them, reschedule, lots of different things going on here, which we'll get to hopefully in a future webinar. Okay, so let's jump back here to our slides and see where we're at. So we talked a little bit about creating single and multiple assignments at once. We showed you how to add grades and mark those assignments as complete. So now let's jump into lesson plans. And I know there's probably a lot of questions about lesson plans, and lesson plans are a really powerful tool. And the key, though, is that to remember is that they're optional. You don't have to use lesson plans. And they certainly can be a little bit more advanced, especially if you're just starting out. So, take a look at what we're going to discuss now and decide for yourself if that's something you want to tackle right now, or if you want to get comfortable just by adding single or multiple assignments at a time, at least maybe for your first month homeschooling, and then determine if you want to then build out lesson plans. But quickly, to define what they are, lesson plans are a sequence of items that have not yet been scheduled as assignments. So if you remember before when we were talking about assignments, assignments require a student, a date, and a subject and course. So lesson plans don't have a student and they don't have a date yet. They do have subject, course, and they have probably all of the other information that you saw in an assignment. So these are perfect if you want to plan everything out ahead of time, or if you have a predefined curriculum. So if you bought a curriculum off the shelf that maybe came with a lesson plan attached to it, this might be really helpful. Or if you simply just want to spend the few weeks that we have now, perhaps before school starts, to create all of your lesson plans, this is a great way to do that. So as we mentioned, they're not tied to a particular student, which means that they can be reused over and over again throughout your homeschooling career. So say, for example, you have a daughter who's a freshman in high school now. If you create all of her lesson plans now, when, say, your younger student becomes a freshman, you can certainly reuse all those lesson plans because they weren't tied to a particular student or a date. And another advantage is that these lesson plans can be shared and imported using the shared lesson plan library. So there's a number of, in fact, hundreds of lesson plans in the shared library. A lot of them are based off of popular curriculum that users have created and uploaded, where you can search through there and find a lesson plan, import it, or adapt it for your own use. Okay, so we're going to demo lesson plans, and what we'll do is we'll see an example lesson plan. I think when you see the example, if you're not quite grasping what a lesson plan is, when you see the example, that might help. We'll create a simple lesson plan. We'll also import a lesson plan, and then we'll schedule a lesson plan and discuss how the scheduling works, particularly by using presets. Okay, so let's jump back over to Homeschool Tracker. And we will go over to the lesson plan screen, which is over here in schedules and planning. And right off the bat, you might see that this screen looks kind of like the agenda list view. And you'll see screens like that throughout the application because we're maintaining the same, essentially, paradigms here. So again, you can sort these the same way that you did in the agenda list view. You can group them, the same way that we did over there. And on the left-hand column, these are the filters. So right now I'm looking at this lesson plan for Rebecca arithmetic, first grade. And what you'll see here is you'll see day numbers, you'll see subject, course, activity, resource, etc. But you don't see dates, you don't see students, because a lesson plan, like we said before, it's just a sequence of items. It's a sequence of what might become assignments when you go ahead and schedule them for your students. So you can see, like on day one in this lesson, it says to do lesson one, on day two to do lesson two, etc. And then when it gets to day 12, okay, it's time for a test. Um, in fact, two tests, an oral test and then likely a written test, and those are worth 100 points each. These other lessons here are worth 0 points. And this goes on for, there's 201 items in here. In fact, if I keep scrolling down, you'll see that there's 170 days worth of lessons. So you can start to see how you can plan out your sequence of items or future assignments for an entire year or an entire curriculum. So that's an example of a lesson plan. Let me go ahead and create a simple lesson plan. Let's go ahead and hit add. And what again, this is very similar to creating assignments. So either adding a single assignment or adding multiple assignments. Let's go ahead and do add multiple assignments, or I should say add multiple lesson plan items. And so now for the lesson plan name, it pulls in the one that we were working on just then, but I'm going to create a new one. We'll just call this test, because we won't actually use this one in the future. And I can choose a subject, course, smart entry field. So I'll just hit a space bar, and let's go ahead and choose grammar, activity, lesson, resource. I'll just pick this one. And then we'll continue the day numbers. And so if you remember, day numbers are essentially the days in which these items will occur. So let's start on 1, increment by 1, and then continue to PLC. So already this is starting to look kind of familiar, right? This is very similar to adding multiple assignments. You may have just noticed that there's a few things kind of missing here, since we're not assigning a date yet to these items. We're not given that option to create a start date and an end date, that sort of thing. So we'll just go ahead and jump to our page lesson chapter. And we'll do a 1-part increment. Let's just do lesson 1, ends with 10, increment by 1. You can show a little sample of that. Yep, that's what I want. And we'll continue to preview. So here's our lesson plan that we just created. It's 10 days long. It's for the grammar course. They're all lessons. It uses this particular resource, and these particular lessons won't be graded. So I can go ahead and select all those and accept them. And you'll notice when you do that, we're actually still looking at the Abeka plan, but I can click here to load up the plan that we just created. And again, this is a smart entry field. So I'll just hit the space bar, click on test, and here it is. And you may have noticed before, right, with the Abeka plan, maybe there were 10 or 12 lessons and then there was a test. So I could go ahead and add single lesson plan test. Again, it's the grammar course. And in this case, let's just say there's a final exam at the end, and the points possible are 100. Hit save, and you'll see how it actually put it at day 0. You can double click on that because I forgot to change this here. And I'll just put this at day 11. So now I have 10 lessons and then a final exam on day 11. And obviously you can keep tweaking this, massaging it until you get it the way you want. You can move the day numbers around. You can move the day numbers around in bulk. So if I wanted to select all of these and change the day numbers, I could do that. I could move them all forward a couple days, or however you need to. You can add multiple assignments again, or multiple lesson plan items again. So let's say you created those 10 lessons, but then I wanted to create another 10 lessons after the final exam, or let's say this wasn't the final, but it was just a test, I could create another 10 lessons after that. It's really flexible in terms of um, your ability to create items quickly. And I think the key is to kind of think about your lesson plan first before creating it, maybe even kind of sketch it out on paper, and then think about the most efficient way to create it using these auto tools that we have in here. So if it means creating all of the lessons first and then creating all the tests second, there's different ways, strategies, I should say, to take advantage of that. And I think you'll as you do it a couple times, you'll start to pick up on a lot of those. And we'll probably do another webinar specifically just on lesson plans and spend a lot more time on that. Okay, so that was creating a simple lesson plan. Let's go ahead and import the lesson plan from the shared library. So if I go back to the menu and go to the shared lesson plans, you can search the shared lesson plan library by just typing in here, or you can leave that blank actually and just hit go, and it'll show you all of the shared lesson plans. I'm going to find one for reading, and there's a number of them in here. I'm going to choose this one. And you can see, the lesson plan here, there's 15 items, and it takes advantage of different resources, and somebody took the time to put in the PLC information on all of that. So I'll go ahead and prepare this for import. I need to give it a name, so just call it reading one plan. And again, I'll select all of the items. Actually, what I want to do first, because if you look here, the subject course is language arts, which means it's just assigned to a single subject. And what I want to do is I want to actually assign these to the reading one course that we created earlier. I can certainly do that after the fact, but I might as well do that now while we're in here. So if I go to action, multi-edit, I can change that right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and choose language arts reading one, hit save. And so that changed that. Under activity, see this little asterisk here, that just means that this is a new activity that I don't already have in my activity list. So it'll create that when it imports it. Same goes for all these resources, because these are resources that I didn't have in my library already. In both those cases, that's what I want to do. So I'll select all and hit accept selected items. And there you go. So now the lesson plan is in my lesson plan library, reading one plan, and it's assigned to the course that we selected, and everything's there. So that's how you would import a lesson plan. So let's talk a little bit about scheduling lesson plans. And so let's say we have all of our lesson plans for the whole year kind of loaded up, ready to go, and it's time to go ahead and schedule those. Well, what I would recommend is probably think about how you want your week to go. So for us, I like to go in on Sunday nights, schedule all of our lessons for the week ahead, and not go any further. I know it can be tempting to schedule your entire year, but that gets really tricky if you need to then reschedule. You certainly can reschedule, but um, I just like the ability to be flexible and to just do 1 week at a time, or even one day at a time if you want to do that. So I'll show you kind of how we do things by scheduling 1 week at a time. So if I go here and I jump down to lesson plans and presets. Actually, before I do that, I'll show you how you can do that from the lesson plan screen itself. So if you wanted to schedule items, I can select the ones that I want, go to action, and choose scheduler. And again, familiar paradigm here. I can choose which students I want to schedule these for, continue today and date, and then I can choose the start date. So let's say I want these to start on Monday and continue until all selected items in the lesson plan are used. I selected, 7 or so items. And so it would take those items and schedule them on the start date, and at the time that I wanted. I'll just go ahead and do this to preview, and we'll do it every day. So if we go to preview, you'll see that those lesson plan items I selected would then be scheduled starting on Monday at 7 a.m. And it would take advantage of the day numbers in the lesson plan and then spread those across going forward. So now this is where lesson plan items then become assignments, right? Because if I go ahead and select all of these and accept them, they would then be created as assignments in my agenda. And then no longer are they lesson plan items. I mean, the lesson plan items still exist in the lesson plan, but now they're scheduled for my particular students. And that's really the advantage is that um, the lesson plan items still exist, meaning, if I have another student come along, I can reuse those same lesson plan items again without having to copy the assignments. But I'm going to show you how you can do this another way. If you jump to your menu and go down to lesson plans and presets. So I have Campbell here and active lesson plans. And these are all the active lesson plans that she's using right now. If I go ahead and click on edit, it will show me a list of all the available lesson plans out there that I can essentially assign to her. So I'll go ahead and choose that reading one plan that we just brought in and go back to active plans. Okay. So now I have these 6 lesson plans that Campbell's using throughout the school year. And these numbers here, total and remaining, these are the total number of items in that plan. And remaining are the number of items left in that plan that I haven't used yet for Campbell. So I'm going to jump to presets here. And so I think I mentioned earlier about presets and how we could take advantage of those. So I'll show you what that looks like. If I click on preset, you'll see that I've created preset times for specific courses. And so you'll see that, Monday through Friday, Campbell has reading 4 from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then on Monday, she has ancient history 1 from 10 to 11. And that kind of changes, for example, here, ancient history 1 is just on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but physical science is on Tuesday and Thursday in this particular case. And, you can create presets, just click add, choose which course you want that preset to exist. So let's do reading 1, since we just brought that lesson plan in. And let's say that's going to occur on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Save that. So you can see how reading 1 now occurs Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This will all make sense in a minute, I swear. So now if I go to the scheduler, for Campbell, I can choose all the lesson plans I want to schedule at once. So I've got reading 1, I've got a math, arithmetic plan scheduled, spelling, history, grammar, physical science, etc. And go ahead and continue to day and date. And now here's the trick. So you've seen this before where we could schedule these daily, weekly, monthly, or spread them. If I choose preset and then choose the start date as, let's say, Monday, and I'm going to continue that through the 21st. So just scheduling next week and continue to preview. What it's going to do is it's going to go through all of those lesson plans. I think there were 6 of them. And it's going to match up the course of those lesson plans with the presets that we just saw on the previous screen. So you can see ancient history 1 starts at 10 a.m., goes to 11 a.m. on Monday. It's now scheduling her spelling from 11 to 12 on Monday, arithmetic from 1 to 2. And then this is the one that we just added, right? Reading 1 is now scheduled from 3 to 4. And it's going to keep doing this. It's going to continue this for that entire time period that we designated. So in this case, for all of next week. So you can see how this can be pretty powerful, right? I can create all of my lesson plans for all of my courses and say every Sunday night, go in here and schedule the week ahead, select all of these, accept the selected items. And when this refreshes, you'll see that a number of these were used, right? So, okay, so now I have 196 items remaining in Abeka arithmetic, 115 in spelling, etc. And if I now jump over to my calendar view and look at next week, you'll see um, all of Campbell's assignments are already scheduled, ready to go for next week. So that's how lesson plans, presets, and scheduling can kind of all work together. And I could do the same thing for Manning right after this, and I would have both of my students scheduled and ready to go for next week. Okay, so sorry, it's already 3:50. I know, and we've got a lot to cover still. Um, so I'm gonna jump to the next thing, which are reports. Okay, so we won't spend a ton of time on reports like transcripts and report cards just yet, because I know, you're probably not thinking about those just yet, given it's you're new users and it's still August, right? So we'll definitely do another webinar just on transcripts, report cards, that sort of thing. But what I want to do is show you the daily task list, which is a powerful tool that your student can then use throughout the week or throughout the day to see what he or she needs to accomplish on that particular day. So let's jump back to Homeschool Tracker, and we'll use this as an example, right? So um, next week, Campbell has all of these different things to do. So let's let her know what she needs to do by creating a daily task list right here in the reports. So I'm going to go ahead and generate this for Campbell. I can select just her, or I can select all students. I'm going to set the date range for next week. So that's the 17th to the 21st. Sort them by date. So it shows each day at a time what she needs to do. And these are all like the optional things that I can include on that report. So go ahead and hit generate and then pick up. And what that did, it just downloaded a PDF to my hard drive, which I can then open. And you'll see this daily task list. And it's broken up by date. So Monday, 10 a.m. she has to do this, and then 11 a.m. she has to do that, 1 p.m. she has to do that, etc. There's a little checkbox here too, just for her or your reference. As they complete those, you can kind of check those off. So this is a handy uh, printout that you can print and put on a bulletin board, staple it, put it in a binder, however you want to use it, where your child or you can kind of make sure you know everything that needs to get done on every day. So that's the daily task list. Okay, let's jump back over here. I will just mention that transcripts and report cards can be generated as long as you have one completed and graded assignment in a course. So as we showed you earlier, when I marked those assignments as teacher complete with a grade, now you have a grade for that course, a running grade in that case, but you could then generate a report card or a transcript. Okay, so thinking about workflows, we walked over, or we discussed them a little bit as we went, but you certainly could create and complete single assignments on a daily basis, right? There's nothing that says you can't do that, and in fact, for a lot of new users, I even recommend that you kind of start doing it that way as you get more familiar with the tools. So, for example, let's say your first week of school, just do it one day at a time and see how it goes. And you'll quickly realize that, there's probably a faster way to do this. And then you can start taking advantage of creating multiple assignments at a time or starting to look at lesson plans. And the other way is what we just described, where create lesson plans and then schedule all of your students 1 week at a time or even 1 day at a time. If you want to just do that every night, the day before, schedule the next day and then print out the daily task list and you're ready to go. That could be one way to do it. Or you could schedule the whole week. It's really up to you. I like to schedule 1 week at a time. And that way, if we do get behind, I can reschedule relatively easily without having to move hundreds of assignments. But, it's certainly your choice and whatever works best for you and your homeschool. Okay, so we do have some time for Q&A. I know it's 3:54 already, but I'll stick around for a little bit longer to answer as many questions as I can. There were a number of questions that came in ahead of time, so I'll start with those. And a lot of them I think we did probably answer along the way here, but let's see. How can I see daily assignments in the calendar? I think we kind of discussed that. Let me jump back to Homeschool Tracker, and I'll just kind of show you as we go. But certainly the calendar view is where you would do that. You can look at it on a monthly basis, one day at a time, one week at a time, etc. And then again, there's filters up here, so you can choose which students you want to view, what types of items you want to view, completion status, etc. So similar filters that we saw on the agenda list view also exist here in the calendar view. I think I saw a question that came in earlier about the colors on the calendar. Um, believe so, yeah. So real quick, if you jump over to the program options on the agenda tab, you can choose your calendar colors here. And this actually refers to the list view as well, I believe. But you can color items using system colors by item type. And so there's some preset colors for things like assignment or chore or day off. Or you can color items using the student colors, which is what I'm using right now. So I can hit save. There was a question too about creating days off, I believe. So if you go back to the calendar, you can simply click add and choose day off. And here, similar sort of wizard that we saw before, you can choose which students you want this day off to apply to. It could be holiday, vacation, or other. If it's other, you can specify a description there. And then when you move to day and date, you can create just one day off by having the start and end date be the same, or you can create a whole range. So, for example, if you're going to take 2 weeks off around the holidays, you can certainly just create that whole range here, continue to preview, and then accept those items to the agenda, just like an assignment. But in this case, a day off obviously isn't going to be graded or anything. It's just a blocker on the calendar. And what it does is then when you do create assignments using multiple assignments, or if you're scheduling lesson plans and you select when you're scheduling to skip days off, it will skip over those days and only schedule assignments on the days where you have designated that you will be homeschooling. Okay, so let's see. There's a lot of questions about rescheduling, which is perfectly normal. So let's jump over to the list view here. I'm going to jump over to next week since we just created all those assignments for Campbell for next week. So here's all of her assignments for next week. To reschedule those, I could simply, let's say I want to skip the whole week. Let's say next week came and we didn't even start school next week, for whatever reason, maybe someone was sick or something. I can select all of them, just choose action, reschedule, and I can then choose when I want the reschedule start to happen. So if you remember, the first date was originally the 17th. If I want to push everything a week, I just go to the 24th and I can continue until all items are moved, or I can make them fit between that date and an end date. I'm just going to continue until all items are moved. And again, you can skip days off or skip non-school days here if you're moving enough items where that might be an impact. I'll continue to preview. And on the preview here, you'll see existing date and new date. And let me just expand this out a little bit. Existing date, Monday, August 17th, but the new date's going to be August 24th. So again, this is just a preview, but it gives you a chance to kind of look over everything, make sure it's the way you want it. You can select all and then hit accept selected items. And so now where'd they all go? They're gone, right? Because I'm looking at the 16th through the 22nd. So if I just change this to the 24th through the 28th, there they are. So we just moved all of those assignments forward an entire week. Now, if, for example, if you just missed one day, you could move everything forward just by one day. And again, this is why I always recommend not scheduling your entire year at the beginning of the year, because if you miss one day and you want to schedule or reschedule your entire year to move forward one day, you can only imagine like what kind of things you might run into, right? The system will certainly do it, no question about that, but it may not be exactly what you were expecting, and you're moving then hundreds, if not thousands, of items all at once, which could certainly be a headache. But if you're just scheduled 1 week at a time, it's much easier to manage, 34 items rather than several thousand items. Um, and if, for example, if you missed one day and you didn't necessarily want to move everything, you just wanted to move the things you missed and perhaps double up on the next day so that you could stay on track and keep going with the curriculum that you had planned, you could certainly just move just that one day's of worth of assignments, let's say just this first day, and reschedule those, in which case I'll go to reschedule and I'll move those to Tuesday. And you'll see what this looks like here. Um, so Monday, these were the old assignments, and they'll now be on Tuesday. And this is highlighted in green here because it's just showing you other things that essentially kind of conflict with that. So it says existing item here. So that means Campbell's going to have a lot of work to do on Tuesday because she missed Monday. And that's another way to reschedule, right? Where you could essentially double up the work for your student rather than pushing everything forward. So I'll just go ahead and select those and accept those. And so now you'll see her August 25th has a lot of assignments on it. And that's also reflected here in the calendar view. If I skip over, you can see Monday is now clear and she's kind of doubled up here on Tuesday. So that's rescheduling in a nutshell. And there is a question that comes up often, and I'll show you that real quick. But basically right now we don't have the ability to utilize presets when rescheduling. It's something that we absolutely want to add, and hopefully we can do that soon. But as you may have noticed, if I do this and choose reschedule, these options here, daily, weekly, monthly, spread evenly, it's missing that preset option because that feature isn't quite built in yet. So what you can do essentially is just move everything forward by an increment that would then still align with your preset. And that might be kind of tricky to do, but that's kind of the workaround right now. But that is something that we are working on and hope to add soon. Okay, so let me see what other questions we have here. It says, once the year is over, can my lesson plans be saved in a permanent file? Not exactly sure what you mean by that question, but hopefully I'll cover it here. One thing you could do is you could take your lesson plan and share it to the shared library, in which case it would be permanent in that it would be shared on our servers for anybody to take advantage of in the future, including yourself. So if you have a lesson plan here, you can select all the items and choose Action, Share, and I can name the plan and then submit it to the shared lesson plan library. Another option is you can export this. So I can go to Action, Export, and it just created a CSV file. The thing with the CSV files is we don't have the ability to import the CSV file. So it would just be a CSV file that you would have on your system for your own reference, which certainly could be helpful. And CSV files, if you don't know, you can edit those in a spreadsheet program like Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets or something like that. Okay, so let's look at some of these other ones. A lot of them were about rescheduling, which we talked about. Copying assignments. Okay, so it says copying assignments to multiple students, establishing dates, and then changing them, blocking time for preset activities. That's a lot of things in one, but let me just show you the basics of copying assignments. So we'll jump back over to the list view. Oh, one other thing before I jump into that. We talked about rescheduling, and certainly I did that from the list view, but you could also reschedule just by clicking and dragging, right? That's entirely possible. So let's say I wanted this one to move over here to Thursday. That's one way to do it, and it updates the assignment accordingly. Okay, let's talk about copying assignments. So I'll jump back to the list view. Let's just pick one here and choose Action, Duplicate. And I can duplicate this to multiple students at once. And there it is. So now you've got two assignments basically identical for Campbell. And then there should be one for Manning now too, right here. And you could do that for many assignments at once. right? And so now I have lots of duplicate assignments. I'm just going to delete those so we don't get confused. There's lots of other copy and duplication tools. So I can copy these into a lesson plan. And this is actually a really cool feature that I'm not sure many even experienced users know about. Uh, One thing you can do is, so if you, let's say you don't know what your lesson plan is going to be, right? You're going into your homeschool year, and we're just going to figure it out as we go. There's nothing wrong with that. But after the year's over, you now have this great record of all the assignments that you created for that particular course or that particular area of study. You could go back through your entire last year, select all of those items. Let's just say that this is it, and choose copy into lesson plan. And what that'll do is it essentially take all of that awesome work that you did over the previous year, and you can then you save that as a lesson plan to use in the future, or to share, with your friends or your co-op, or just with the community at large. So in this case, I'll just select all those assignments, choose copy into lesson plan, pick a lesson plan name, and then a starting day number, typically one, and then it'll copy into a new lesson plan, and then you can use that, say, for your younger students. So that's a great tool to use or to think about using, if perhaps you don't have it all figured out now, but at the end of the year, you're like, man, this was a great lesson plan. It worked really well for Campbell, and I want Manning to use it next year. Rather than having to copy all of those things again and again and again, I can essentially copy them into a lesson plan and then use those accordingly. Okay. Looking at these questions here, I know we did cover a number of them. It's like there was a question: if we put in start and ending times, will HST prevent us from overlapping lessons? No, it will not. So, and that's by design essentially. So you could have multiple lessons that occur during a given time slot. So let's say between 10 and 11 is when Campbell's working on ancient history, but not only do I want her to read chapter one, for example, but I also want her to do chapter one in the workbook. And I might have those as two different assignments, but they occur at essentially the same time, 10 to 11. Um, that's certainly one way to do it. But no, Homeschool Tracker will not prohibit you from having multiple assignments occur at the same time. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's a question about lesson plans. Is there a way to view which lesson plans have been scheduled on the lesson plan page um, when adding future days to the schedule? Or if I schedule 1 week of lessons at a time, how do I quickly access a week later which plans were already scheduled while staying in the lesson plan mode? Um, okay, so I'll try to answer that. Not exactly sure um, what you're asking there, but let's jump into the lesson plan. I'll show you how this works. So there's something called used status in a lesson plan. And as you saw over here in lesson plan presets, when I scheduled those lesson plan items for Campbell, it set the lesson plan items that we used as used. So for example, you've got 201 total and 196 remaining. That means 5 items have now been used. And we can see those if we go, and so we'll look at this one, Abeka arithmetic. If we go back to the lesson plan and choose Abeka arithmetic, and right now we're displaying everything. But if I go to this displaying filter here and choose used, I can say, I would just want to see the items that were used. And so these were the used items in that plan. You could certainly view, let's see, both, right? So now I'm seeing which ones are used and which ones are unused. This kind of gives you kind of a running look at, okay, I know that that I've already scheduled these 5, and that I've got, these left to go. And so I can add new items, after the last one that was used, etc. One question that does come up often is how do you change the used status or reset the used status? Because let's say you assigned or scheduled a bunch of lesson plan items and then later deleted them from the agenda and now want to reschedule them, but the scheduler won't let you because it sees that those were already used. You can always go back into the lesson plan like this, bring up the used items, and then select those and just go to Action, Set Used Status. And so for Campbell, I can mark these as not used and click Save. And now that used status goes away. And so I can essentially reassign these items to Campbell using the scheduler because they're no longer marked as used. Okay, so I think we'll do one more question as we're running about 4:11 now. So let's see. There was a question about how to make a daily assignment or weekly assignment report. I think we talked about that in the daily task list. Um, okay, so this question comes up fairly often about giving your students access, but limiting their access to a certain extent. So if you go here to the menu and go to subscription and users, you can not only change your password, extend your subscription, change your email address, etc., but you can also see all of your user accounts. So these are my students, Campbell and Manning, but they don't have a username yet, which means they can't log in as themselves. So I'll go ahead and double click on Campbell and say active as yes. And once I do that, I'm given the option to create a username for her. So I'll just create one, Campbell test, and do a password. And then I can give her certain permissions, like what do I want her to see, what do I not want her to see, etc. So, I want her to be able to do most of this stuff. Probably not the scheduler or change the transcript supplemental, but she can check those. This is key. Do you want them to be able to add and edit all the fields in an assignment? Perhaps, maybe not. In this case, I'll say no. Or I don't want her to move the dates or times around, or I don't want her to edit the points possible or earned or any of this. So let's just give her access to that and click Save. So now let's just log in as her and see what we see. Okay, so now I'm logged in as Campbell, and you can see already the menu looks a little bit different, right? I can't edit all of those lists. I did give her access to the library, so she can see all the library items, but I didn't give her access to, the subjects and courses list or activities or things like that. And if I go to the calendar view, and we'll go to next week. Oops, here we go. She can see things in here, and you'll notice there's no teacher complete button here because she can't have access to that. If she goes to more, she can see all the information here, but she can't edit it, right? So it's kind of like a read-only sort of mode, and I'm trying to click and drag. I can't reschedule these right now. So that's a great way, if you want your student to be able to log in, but not be able to edit things. And this kind of goes with a lot of the paradigms that we used when creating Homeschool Tracker. If you're coming from Homeschool Tracker Plus, there was a lot of printing, right? And I think as homeschoolers, we do a lot of printing, and for us, we're trying to get away a little bit from printing, and that's kind of why we're going, with a digital solution like this. If your student has their own computer, or if there's a family computer they can log into and jump on, this allows them to see everything they need to see without you having to print out sheets and sheets and sheets of task lists or different reports for them to look at. So that was kind of the reason behind allowing student access to jump in here and see all of this. So and as you probably have witnessed, your children are savvier and savvier every day when it comes to working online. So I'm sure that they probably wouldn't have any problem just kind of logging in here, seeing what they need to see, doing the work, and then letting you know that that they're all set and you can jump in and then mark those as complete. Okay, so it's 4:15 now, and this was a great webinar. Thank you so much for all of the questions that came in. It looks like there's still 30 plus questions in the queue, and so as I mentioned before, we're going to post this recording on our blog, and I'll try to write up all the questions and the answers to the questions right there in the post as well, and I'll email all of you that attended and let you know when that's live. Hopefully, we can do it in the next day or two. Um, there are a lot of questions, so hopefully we have time to answer all of those. But I just want to again say thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. This has been really helpful for us to kind of go through a lot of these topics with you. I hope hopefully it was really helpful to you as well. And we really want to do a lot more of these going forward. It's like I said at the beginning, it's really our mission, our purpose, to educate you and to help you use this tool to its full potential. Because as you've seen, just in this hour and 15 minutes or so, we've covered a ton of different topics, and we've only scratched the surface of what Homeschool Tracker is really capable of. And that being said, I do want to just say for a second that there are so many features in Homeschool Tracker that it certainly can be intimidating. But that doesn't mean that you have to use all of them. As we discussed in some of those different workflows, you could just enter single assignments one day at a time, and it'd be great. And you could still end up with the same transcript at the end of the year as somebody that did all the lesson planning and all the scheduling and all of that. So just keep that in mind, right? That while we did see a lot of cool features here today, you don't necessarily have to take advantage of all of them all at once. We like to just kind of ease into it. So that being said, we do want to do more of these webinars. I'll also try to send you an email as well. And hopefully if you have any feedback on the webinar or ideas for future topics, you can email us. And like I said, Amy, who I'm sure a lot of you have spoken to in the past via email, she's on the email all the time and will be logging all those questions and jotting down ideas for future webinars. And this being kind of the peak season for a lot of us, August, September, hopefully we can do another one of these perhaps even next week. So thank you again so much. And we will be posting this recording shortly, and I'll send you all an email when it's up. And I hope you have a great week. And thanks again for joining us.